At 0513, a Russian Mi-8 crew scanned the darkness believing they were the hunters. They were wrong. Their thermal sensors suddenly locked onto a heat signature closing in at 115 miles per hour. In seconds, a Ukrainian FP-1 drone is about to defy physics and do the impossible, turn a heavily armed gunship into prey. The Mi-8's door gunner, situated precariously but confidently near the open hatch, was the first to achieve visual confirmation. Peering through his night vision goggles, he spotted it. A dark, impossibly fast shape against the scatter of the stars. On his scope, it was barely larger than a large bird. Its composite airframe and highly efficient engine were nearly invisible on the main radar, and their infrared signature had been partially masked by the cold air surrounding it. This was stealth by design, but its sudden, aggressive vector was an act of pure defiance. The pilot's first instinct, ingrained by decades of operational doctrine, was to bank hard left, bringing the helicopter's massive 12.7mm machine gun to bear. But the FP-1 wasn't attempting to evade, it was closing the gap. Then, the helicopter's recently updated defensive suite erupted with an alert that was utterly impossible, a high-pitched electronic scream that cut through the cockpit's usual hum. The drone had gone active. The pilot reacted immediately, pulling collective, the move of a hunter asserting dominance. The Mi-8 climbed hard, straining against gravity, while the co-pilot executed the standard defensive countermeasure, dumping flares. 6 burning magnesium pellets tumbled into the night, each flare a searing testament to outdated military thinking, burning at an incredible 2,000 degrees Celsius. The light show was spectacular, a blinding burst of heat designed to overwhelm any simple infrared seeker. Against a vintage shoulder-fired missile like a Stinger or an Igla, the biggest threat envisioned when the Mi-8's ASO-2V flare dispensers were installed in the 1990s, this maneuver would have been a perfect defense. The incoming missile, designed to chase the hottest signature in its field of view, would infallibly divert toward the 2,000 C flares. But the Ukrainian programmers had anticipated this precise reaction. The FP-1 was no flying zombie, it represented a fundamental shift in drone warfare doctrine. Its thermal sensors were designed to completely ignore the sudden intense burst of the flares. The drone was programmed to look for specific, unique heat patterns. The 2 Klimov TV3-117 turboshaft engines powering the Mi-8 were, in effect, 2 individual infrared lighthouses. Each engine was pumping out 2,200 horsepower. While the helicopter cruised, those engines burned at exactly 450 degrees. The Mi-8's metallic structure also created a unique thermal fingerprint, including the specific heat signature of the main rotor hub and an immense, warm air wake generated by the exhaust plume stretching dozens of meters behind the aircraft. This composite thermal signature was as unique and complex as human DNA. This is precisely why the FP-1 disregarded the flares entirely. It knew the difference between a magnesium distraction and its target's operational signature. The flares, burning at 2,000 degrees Celsius for 3 seconds, simply could not mask the unique signature the drone was hunting. As the helicopter stabilized its climb, the door gunner desperately opened fire. The PKT machine gun spat tracers into the darkness, sending a few dozen 7.62mm rounds tearing after the target. But hitting a drone at this distance, firing from the shaking, vibrating platform of a massive helicopter, was almost impossible. It was, as the gunner would realize later, like trying to thread a needle while standing in the middle of an earthquake. The FP-1, however, was not reliant on luck or simple evasive maneuvers. Its flight control system executed pre-programmed evasion patterns. Jinking left, then right, it danced around the tracers, following instructions uploaded by its remote operators who were still 190 kilometers away. Just as the door gunner was emptying his magazine, the crew was confronted with an even graver problem, problem number 2. The Mi-8's radio crackled not with routine traffic, but with sheer, unadulterated panic radiating from Air Defense Command. The message was terrifyingly concise. Multiple contacts inbound bearing 247, altitude 50 meters and climbing speed 180 kilometers per hour. This was never about a single drone. The aerial chase, the high-stakes duel over Rostov, had been nothing more than a simple sleight of hand. While the Mi-8 crew focused all their attention and technology skyward on the lone, maneuvering FP-1, a kamikaze flock, the real strike package, had ghosted past them at treetop level. The helicopter engagement was a brilliant, deadly diversion, drawing resources and attention away from the critical target, the Milorovo ammunition depot. At 05:15, the FP-1 made its decisive move. Instead of following the predictable straight-line attack vector that the pilot expected, the drone pulled into a tight climbing spiral. This maneuver defied its nature, trading forward speed for rapidly gained altitude. Such a sustained, sharp climb should have been impossible for a drone carrying over 50 kilograms of explosives. However, the Ukrainian engineers had meticulously stripped away every single non-essential component from the FP-1. Every saved kilogram translated directly into increased maneuverability, allowing the drone to perform combat geometry previously reserved for manned aircraft. The Mi-8 desperately attempted to match the FP-1's climb, but they were already 2 steps behind the drone's pre-programmed sequence. They were trapped, forced into an aerial duel while a larger, deadlier swarm was already closing in on their protected facility. 32 kilometers away from the climbing aerial engagement, a Russian Panzer S-1 air defense battery, tasked with defending the Milorovo depot, detected the low-flying drone swarm. The operator faced an impossible instantaneous choice: engage the cluster of low-level drones threatening the massive ammunition dump, or provide support and guidance to the Mi-8 struggling in its desperate aerial duel. Meanwhile, inside the Mi-8's fuselage, the tension was unbearable. In the massive cargo bay, 8 fully kitted VDV paratroopers who minutes ago had been ready to deploy for ground support in the hunt now gripped their rifles, reduced to terrified passengers. They were caught in a high-speed knife fight they could not influence. The crew chief was already calculating the grim odds, his eyes fixed on the emergency exits, trying to estimate how many seconds they would have to bail out if the main rotors failed or separated. The pilot, recognizing the FP-1's persistence and the failure of the flares, faced a final, catastrophic decision. His hand hovered over the engine cutoff switches, the button for auto-rotation. Cutting the power would silence the massive Klimov engines, allowing the rotors to windmill and the helicopter to drop like a stone. Without the telltale heat of the engines, the hope was that the sophisticated drone might lose lock during its climb. But auto-rotation was a massive gamble. Dive toward the deck and risk that the FP-1 would follow him down, resulting in a catastrophic impact even from a near miss. Or climb higher, attempting to exceed the drone's operational ceiling, but risk the thin air robbing his rotors of vital lift. His radar warning receiver painted their complete picture of doom, the FP-1 directly above, now just 800 meters away and closing fast, and below, 6 more drones were boring in directly on the Milorovo ammunition depot. In the cargo compartment, the VDV squad leader, relying on survival instinct rather than protocol, made his own calculation. At their current altitude, if the rotors failed, they had perhaps 40 seconds of freefall before impact. He ordered his men to brace. The FP-1 reached the apex of its spiral climb and leveled off. Unlike the panicked crew beneath it, its processor did not care about human drama or fear. It ran pure, cold mathematics. Intercept geometry, optimal. Warhead status, armed. Distance to target, 600 meters. Current closure rate, impact in 11 seconds. The drone's control surfaces made minute, calculated adjustments, perfectly centering the Mi-8's massive heat bloom within its seeker's field of view. This deadly piece of automation was now in the perfect position to deliver its lethal 60-kilogram payload. The warhead contained not just high explosive, but 3,000 densely packed tungsten ball bearings, each 6 millimeters in diameter, designed specifically to create a lethal, widespread cloud of shrapnel capable of shredding the helicopter's aluminum structure. 7 seconds to impact. The gap was shrinking at a terrifying 39 meters per second. The door gunner could now see the drone clearly. No longer just a spot on the scope, it was a dark, distinct cross against the shimmering backdrop of the stars. In a final, desperate act, he emptied the rest of his PKT's belt. 250 rounds screamed into the night in 8 seconds, the tracers drawing orange lines through the black expanse. 3 rounds found their mark. 1 round punched clean through the drone's left wing, leaving a fist-sized hole. Another hit and shattered the pitot tube, effectively blinding the drone's airspeed indicator. The third, a miracle shot, struck the hardened steel warhead casing itself, but failed to penetrate the high-density material. 4 seconds, the damage was done. The FP-1's pierced wing immediately caused it to roll hard left. The flight control computer, still running its relentless algorithm, compensated, but every correction bled precious airspeed. The drone's speed plummeted to 135 kilometers per hour. It was now officially below stall speed. But momentum is a tyrant that cares nothing for aerodynamics. 180 kilograms of drone and explosives continued their ballistic trajectory. The wing ceased generating lift, but the sheer force of the dive carried it forward, just 100 meters from the Mi-8's main rotor head. The panicking pilot, now with less than 2 seconds remaining, abandoned all textbook procedures and pulled out the only trick he had left in his bag. A survival maneuver learned from years of flying in unforgiving terrain. He slammed the cyclic stick hard right while simultaneously stomping the left rudder pedal. The maneuver, known as a pedal turn, caused the Mi-8 to pivot violently on its vertical axis. The tail boom whipped away from the drone's path. The helicopter's fuselage tilted a brutal 40 degrees, throwing the VDV paratroopers hard against their restraints. For 1 critical second, the FP-1 seeker lost its lock. The familiar heat signature had vanished from its field of view. But 1 second was not enough. The drone's processor immediately initiated emergency reacquisition routines, scanning furiously for that thermal DNA. There, 30 degrees to the right, 25 meters range, and closing. The damaged control surfaces struggled to adjust, but with limited airspeed, the drone was now effectively just falling with lethal style. Suddenly, the proximity fuse activated. The FP-1 was programmed to detonate when it came within 10 meters of any heat source that matched its highly specific target parameters. The pilot's desperate, bone-jarring pedal turn had saved the helicopter from a direct center-of-mass hit, but a 60-kilogram warhead traveling at this speed does not require precision. Close was good enough. The warhead detonated instantly, centered near the Mi-8's massive main rotor hub. The resulting 3,000 tungsten ball bearings erupted outwards in a perfect lethal sphere, traveling at an astronomical speed of 2,800 meters per second. The damage was instantaneous in total. First, the blast wave hit, traveling at 6,900 meters per second. The Mi-8's left cabin door, already open for the gunner, simply imploded. Plexiglass windows shattered into a million pieces. The shockwave compressed the air inside the cabin to 3 times atmospheric pressure, and then, just as quickly, reversed into a violent vacuum. Maps, sensitive equipment, and an unsecured rifle were violently sucked out into the void of the night. Then came the tungsten. Hundreds of high-density bearings found their target, punching through the Mi-8's aluminum skin like it was thin paper. One bearing severed a critical hydraulic line, instantly spraying highly pressurized purple fluid at 3,000 psi. Another destroyed the port engine's fuel controller. 3 more bearings shredded the tail rotor gearbox, crippling the helicopter's ability to stabilize its flight. Then, the port engine exploded. Turbine engines do not explode dramatically in plumes of fire like they do in movies. Instead, the compressor blades, spinning at 33,000 revolutions per minute, separated violently from their disc. Each blade became an independent projectile, slicing through the engine casing, vital fuel lines, and control cables. Jet fuel instantly sprayed onto the hot metal, and fire bloomed a terrifying orange against the pitch black of the night sky. The Mi-8 began to spin. Without any authority from the now destroyed tail rotor, the massive torque generated by the main rotor was left unopposed. The helicopter immediately entered an unrecoverable violent spiral. In the cargo bay, the VDV squad leader did not hesitate. "Jump, jump, jump!" he screamed. 8 paratroopers released their restraints and dove instantly through the shattered cabin door into the overwhelming darkness, seeking the dubious safety of the freezing night air. The rest of the crew followed, abandoning the dying machine. At 3,300 meters, they hung under their canopies with maybe 35 seconds to watch their helicopter, the very platform that had guaranteed their safety just minutes prior, sink rapidly toward the Earth. At Aero 517, the end came. The Mi-8's main rotor separated violently. 5 massive titanium blades, each weighing 130 kilograms, flew off in different directions like the world's largest, deadliest boomerang. One blade traveled over 500 meters before burying itself deep into a distant wheat field. The remaining wreckage of the helicopter became a fireball, a comet trailing fire and smoke across the Rostov sky. Impact occurred at 05:18 hours. The Mi-8 struck a frozen potato field at a speed of 340 kilometers per hour, leaving a deep, fiery gash in the ground, marking the death of an entire operational doctrine. While the helicopter provided its spectacular fiery light show in the distance, those 6 stealth drones that had slipped past during the aerial duel reached their destination, the Milorovo ammunition depot. The facility's dedicated Panzer S-1 battery, which had been momentarily distracted by the massive explosion and the helicopter's descent, had tragically lost track of the low-level intruders amidst the ground clutter of the radar systems. At 05:19, the coordinated destruction began. The first drone struck Warehouse 3. Inside, thousands of 122mm Grad rockets were waiting to be shipped to the front lines. The 60-kilogram warhead punched clean through the building's thin metal roof, instantly destroying the structure with a chain reaction of massive secondary explosions that illuminated the entire horizon. The mission was not merely a tactical success. It was a profound, strategic, and historical paradigm shift. For the first time in military history, a long-range strike drone had successfully engaged and destroyed a manned helicopter in aerial combat. The Ukrainian FP-1 had irrevocably proven that drones were no longer just slow, predictable flying zombies designed only for stationary targets. They were intelligent, fast, and sophisticated aerial predators capable of highly complex maneuvers, coordination, and the calculated destruction of maneuvering air platforms.